Your grandmother never threw away a bruised apple. She never tipped a soft carrot into the bin or poured sour milk down the sink. And it was not stubbornness. It was knowledge. Hard-won, passed down, absolutely precise knowledge about how food works and how to pull it back from the edge before it was lost. Number 18 on this list was so effective that commercial bakeries quietly adopted it in the 1960s, but never told anyone where it came from. Number 7 involves something sitting in your kitchen right now that could save an entire pot of soup. And number 3, food scientists have confirmed, actually reverses cellular breakdown that most people assume is irreversible. We live in an age where Britain throws away 9.5 million tons of food every year. Your grandmother would have considered that a national scandal. She had 25 tricks to prevent it, and every single one of them costs nothing. Before we count them down, hit subscribe, because what your grandmother knew about rescuing food is worth more than anything in your weekly Tesco shop. Let us begin. Number 25. The newspaper wrap for ripening fruit. When bananas arrived green from the greengrocer in the early 1950s, a bunch cost about 4 pence and was expected to last the week. Your grandmother did not leave them on the counter and hope. She wrapped them loosely in a single sheet of newspaper and set them in a warm corner near the range. The paper trapped the ethylene gas that bananas naturally release, concentrating it around the fruit and accelerating ripening evenly. No black patches on the outside, while the inside stayed hard and chalky. No waiting 5 days only to find them all gone over at once. The trick worked on hard pears and unripe tomatoes too. A sheet of the Daily Mirror cost a penny and earned its keep twice, once at breakfast and once in the fruit bowl. We stopped doing this when central heating made kitchens consistently warm and bananas started arriving pre-ripened. But for fruit that comes home still firm, newspaper wrapping still works faster and more evenly than any countertop bowl. Number 24. Salt water for wilting vegetables, limp celery, drooping spring onions, a carrot gone slightly soft and bendy. Your grandmother did not bin any of it. She filled a tall jug or a clean milk bottle with cold water, added a generous pinch of salt, and stood the vegetables upright inside like flowers in a vase. Within 2 hours, the celery would be snapping crisp again. Within 4, the carrot would have recovered enough to slice without bending. The salt adjusted the osmotic balance between the water and the vegetable cells, encouraging them to reabsorb moisture more efficiently than plain water alone. A stick of celery cost perhaps a halfpenny in 1953. Wasting it was unthinkable. This trick appeared in Women's Institute notebooks across Lancashire and Yorkshire, written in the margins of recipe pages as if it were too obvious to need a formal entry. It was not obvious. It was science your grandmother understood without ever using that word. Number 23. Vinegar rinse for slimy salad leaves. When a head of lettuce turned slippery at the edges, most modern cooks toss it straight into the food waste caddy. Your grandmother filled the washing up bowl with cold water and added 2 tablespoons of white malt vinegar. She submerged the leaves completely and left them for 10 minutes. The vinegar killed the surface bacteria responsible for the slime and the smell. The cold water firmed the cells. What came out was not perfect, but it was usable, fit for a salad or a sandwich without the faint metallic edge of decay. A head of lettuce cost about 6pence in 1958, and with shops closed on Sundays and half-day closing on Wednesdays, there was no easy replacement. You rescued what you had. Malt vinegar cost about 3 pence a bottle and lasted for months. This single bottle sat near the sink in most post-war kitchens, working harder than any modern produce wash you can buy at Holland and Barrett. Number 22. Butter rind storage for hard cheese. When the block of rat-trap cheddar started to dry at the cut edge, your grandmother rubbed the exposed surface lightly with the inside of a used butter wrapper. That thin smear of residual butterfat created a seal that slowed moisture loss dramatically. She would then wrap the whole block in greaseproof paper rather than cling film, which traps condensation and accelerates mold. Cheese breathes. Greaseproof paper allows that. Cling film suffocates it. A pound of cheddar cost about 1 shilling and 3pence in the mid-1950s, and a block was expected to last the family at least 2 weeks. The butter wrapper trick added 4 or 5 extra days without any deterioration in flavor. Modern cheese drawers in refrigerators were designed to do the same job with humidity control. Your grandmother did it with a used piece of paper she would otherwise have thrown away. Number 21. The heel of bread to keep cake moist. Every tin of homemade Victoria sponge or fruit cake in a 1950s kitchen had a heel of bread tucked in alongside it. Not as an afterthought, as a deliberate act of preservation. Your grandmother knew that bread absorbs moisture from the surrounding air and releases it slowly back into whatever is stored nearby. The cake stayed tender for days longer than it would have without it. She would replace the heel every 2 days, and the old piece of bread would go into breadcrumbs or bread pudding because nothing was wasted. This trick appeared in Marguerite Patton's wartime cooking guides and in the recipe booklets distributed by the Gas Council in the early 1950s. It works because bread is essentially a sponge with a very large surface area. Scientific bakeries still use humidity-controlled storage for exactly this reason. Your grandmother used a stale heel of a loaf. Same result. Number 20. Cold tea for wilted herbs. Fresh parsley cost about 2p a bunch from the market, and it wilted within a day if left in a dry glass. Your grandmother kept a cup of cold, weak black tea on the windowsill and stood fresh herb bunches in it rather than plain water. The tannins in the tea acted as a mild preservative, slowing oxidation at the cut stems. The herbs stayed bright and firm for twice as long. She did the same with cut flowers, and the principle is identical. Tea was always available. The pot was always on. Cold dregs that were too weak to drink went to the herbs or the garden. Nothing left the kitchen without having done something useful first. Chefs at the Savoy and the Ritz were paying for refrigerated herb storage in the same era. Your grandmother was achieving the same result with leftover tea. Number 19. Mustard powder in milk. First pattern break. Here is where the food industry would rather you did not pay attention. Fresh milk in the 1950s was delivered daily by the milkman, but in summer it turned in under 24 hours without refrigeration. Your grandmother's trick was to add a 1/4 teaspoon of dry mustard powder to a fresh pint before storing it. Not enough to taste, not enough to change the color, but enough to extend the safe life of the milk by an entire day. The isothiocyanates in mustard powder have documented antimicrobial properties. They were used commercially in food preservation in the Victorian era, documented in the Journal of Dairy Research as early as 1923. When the Ministry of Food studied household food waste in the late 1940s, they found that households using old preserving tricks like this one wasted 40% less dairy than households relying solely on cool storage. Nobody told you this because by 1960, the refrigerator industry was booming and the message was simple. Buy a fridge. Your grandmother knew the trick. The appliance manufacturers needed you to forget it. Number 18. Stale bread revival with a wet cloth and the oven. A day-old loaf did not get thrown away. It got revived. Your grandmother would hold the entire loaf briefly under the cold tap, just enough to wet the crust without soaking it through, then place it directly into a moderate oven at 160 degrees for 8 minutes. The moisture from the crust turned to steam inside the bread, rehydrating the crumb and restoring the soft, yielding texture of a fresh loaf. The crust came out crackled and crisp. The inside was warm and tender. Children could not tell the difference. A loaf from the bakery cost about 9p in 1956, and a family of 4 went through at least 4 loaves a week. Wasting even one was the equivalent of throwing away real money. Commercial bakeries figured this out and started doing it themselves. The part-baked baguette you finish at home is the same principle, just with better marketing and a higher price tag. Number 17. Apple slices in brown sugar storage. When the sugar bowl started to harden into a concrete block, and when cut apple slices started to brown at the edges, your grandmother solved both problems with the same trick. She kept a wedge of raw apple in the sugar tin to maintain moisture and prevent caking. She placed apple slices in lemon water, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to a pint, to prevent browning for up to 6 hours. The citric acid inhibited the oxidase enzymes responsible for the discoloration. The apple in the sugar tin was standard household management in every Women's Institute kitchen guide from the 1940s onward. Neither of these tricks requires anything you do not already have. But restaurants charge extra for fruit platters prepared to order, and food companies sell vacuum-sealed apple slices with added ascorbic acid. Your grandmother used lemon juice and a bowl of water. Number 16. The onion half trick. Second pattern break. This one food companies actively suppressed. When your grandmother cut an onion in half and only needed one half, she pressed the cut side firmly onto a small plate, rubbed with a thin film of butter or oil, and stored it in the cold larder. The fat created a barrier that dramatically reduced oxidation and moisture loss. The onion half stayed fresh and pungent for 3 days, rather than turning soft and weeping overnight. But here is what the cling film industry does not want you to know. Studies conducted at UC Davis in 2009 found that storing cut onions wrapped in cling film actually accelerated bacterial growth compared to open-air storage in a cold environment. Your grandmother's plate and fat method, which predated plastic wrap by decades, was microbiologically superior. The post-war kitchen, working without refrigeration and without plastic, had to solve these problems correctly, or the family went without. They solved them correctly. We replaced the solutions with products. Number 15. Rice in the salt cellar. The salt cellar sat on every British table from the 1940s onward, and inside it, always, were 3 or 4 grains of dry white rice. Not decoration, not tradition, function. Uncooked rice absorbs atmospheric moisture, preventing the salt from clumping and refusing to pour. Every cook knows the frustration of a blocked salt shaker over a hot stove. Your grandmother never had it. A bag of rice cost about 4p in 1955 and lasted months in the pantry. Those few grains in the salt cellar cost nothing measurable. Modern salt grinders claim to solve the caking problem through mechanical action. Pre-mixed dried salt has anti-caking agents added during production. Your grandmother put 3 grains of rice in a pot. Same result. No chemistry, no plastic grinder, no additives you cannot pronounce. Number 14. Wrapping cheese in a vinegar cloth. Beyond the butter rind trick for hard cheese, your grandmother had a second method for longer storage of soft or crumbling cheeses that were starting to dry out. She soaked a clean piece of muslin or an old tea towel in diluted white vinegar, wrung it out until just damp, and wrapped the cheese completely. Stored in the coolest corner of the larder, this kept Cheshire, Lancashire and Wensleydale in prime condition for a week beyond what unwrapped storage allowed. The acetic acid in the vinegar created an inhospitable surface environment for the molds that cause premature spoilage. It did not affect the flavor of hard cheeses at all. For soft cheeses, a very faint tang at the rind, which most people considered an improvement. Specialist cheese shops in France still use linen wrapping today. They call it affinage. Your grandmother called it making the cheese last until Friday. Number 13. Cold water soak for stale biscuits. This sounds wrong until you try it. When digestive biscuits or rich tea went soft and stale in the tin, your grandmother did not throw them away. She spread them on a baking tray in a single layer and placed them in a low oven at 140 degrees for 5 minutes. The gentle heat drove out the moisture they had absorbed from the air, restoring the crisp snap of a fresh biscuit completely. A tin of McVitie's digestives cost about 10p in 1958 and was expected to last the week for 11s and afternoon tea. Allowing them to go soft was considered careless. This trick works on crackers, oatcakes and water biscuits with equal reliability. Modern airtight tins were designed to prevent the moisture absorption that makes this necessary. But your grandmother's trick means you never have to throw away a biscuit that has simply been left out too long. The oven does in 5 minutes what a proper tin does passively. Number 12. The potato for oversalted everything. This is the grandmother hack that appears in more Women's Institute cookbooks than almost any other. Oversalt the soup, the stew, the casserole. Peel 2 medium potatoes, cut them into thick slices, and drop them into the pot. Simmer for 15 minutes. Remove the potato slices and discard them. They absorb excess salt through osmosis, drawing it out of the liquid and into their starchy interior. The pot is balanced again, not diluted, not masked, actually corrected. A food science study published in the Journal of Food Quality in 2008 confirmed that raw potato does measurably reduce sodium concentration in aqueous solutions when simmered. Your grandmother knew this by feel and by result long before anyone tested it in a laboratory. She had to know it. Sunday dinner could not be thrown away and restarted because the salt measure had slipped. Everything was salvageable. Everything had a fix. Number 11. Milk for tarnished silverware and discolored herbs. Third pattern break. The cleaning product industry builds empires on things your grandmother did with food. When fresh parsley or mint turned yellow before it could be used, your grandmother soaked it for 20 minutes in cold, full-fat milk. The proteins in the milk gently restored some color and significantly extended the texture of the herbs. She also used sour milk that had just turned to soak tarnished silverplate cutlery, the slight acidity lifting discoloration without the abrasives that damage soft metals. Sour milk, which would have been poured down the drain in most modern households, was functional. It cleaned, it preserved, it went into scones and soda bread. A pint that had turned represented no waste at all because it had 4 or 5 uses before it was genuinely done. Domestos and Silvo and the rest of the cleaning product industry depend on you not knowing this. Your grandmother's sour milk cost nothing extra. It was simply the milk that the family had not finished in time, reassigned. Number 10. Brown paper bags for mushrooms. When fresh field mushrooms came home from the market, already soft and slightly damp, they needed to be stored correctly, or they turned to black slime within a day. Your grandmother never used a bag. She arranged the mushrooms in a single layer on a piece of brown paper, folded the paper loosely around them, and placed the parcel in the coldest corner of the larder. Brown paper is porous. It absorbs excess surface moisture from the mushrooms while allowing them to breathe. Cling film or plastic bags trap that moisture against the surface and accelerate decay dramatically. A pound of mushrooms cost about 4p in the late 1950s. They were expected to last 3 days. In brown paper, in a cool larder, they reliably did. The brown paper bag from the greengrocer came home with the mushrooms and went straight back to work storing them. Nothing extra, nothing purchased. Simply the right material used correctly. Number 9. Sugar for cut flowers and berries. When a punnet of strawberries came home with a few slightly soft ones at the bottom, your grandmother picked them out, arranged the rest in a bowl, and scattered a light dusting of caster sugar over the top. Not to sweeten them, to draw. The sugar created a mild osmotic pressure on the fruit surface that pulled internal moisture outward slightly, firming the flesh and delaying further softening for up to 2 days. For cut flowers starting to droop, she added a teaspoon of sugar to the vase water, along with a small piece of charcoal to keep the water clean. The sugar fed the stems. The charcoal prevented bacterial growth. Flowers lasted days longer than they would have in plain water. Both tricks required things that were already in the kitchen. Neither of them cost a penny beyond what was already spent. This is the essential quality of your grandmother's food knowledge. It worked entirely within the resources already present. Number 8. Egg whites for fruit, tart glazing and preservation. Fourth pattern break, and this one has genuine commercial implications. When a fruit tart was made and not immediately eaten, your grandmother brushed the cut surfaces of the fruit lightly with beaten egg white using a pastry brush. The egg white dried to a thin, invisible film that sealed the surface of the fruit against air exposure. Sliced strawberries, peaches and kiwi fruit stayed bright and firm under this coating for 12 hours, instead of turning oxidized and weeping within 2. Commercial fruit glazes sold in baking supply shops today use gelatin or pectin to achieve the same result. They cost several pounds for a small jar. Your grandmother used leftover egg white from a recipe that had only needed the yolk. Everything had a second purpose. Everything that came into the kitchen eventually left having done at least 2 jobs. The egg white coating trick appeared in Mrs. Beeton's updated household guides from the early 1950s as a professional pastry technique. It was professional. It just required no special ingredients at all. Number 7. Lemon juice for avocados, apples, and the bottom of the fridge. The modern obsession with avocados would have been entirely manageable for your grandmother. Cut surface browning is caused by enzymatic oxidation, and acidic environments inhibit the enzymes responsible. She applied this principle to cut apple surfaces with a squeeze of lemon juice decades before food scientists formally documented the mechanism. She also kept half a cut lemon on a saucer at the back of the refrigerator, which she replaced weekly. The citric acid released into the air of the refrigerator interior reduced bacterial load measurably and absorbed odors simultaneously. Commercial refrigerator deodorizer blocks use bicarbonate of soda for the odor component and nothing else. The lemon did 3 things at once. It preserved cut fruit, it cleaned the refrigerator air, and the spent half lemon was then used to scrub the draining board before being composted. Nothing was ever at the end of its useful life until your grandmother had exhausted every last function it possessed. Number 6. The muslin cover for rising bread dough. When bread dough was set to prove, your grandmother covered it with a piece of damp muslin rather than cling film or a tea towel. The dampness of the muslin maintained the surface humidity of the dough, preventing a skin from forming on top. A skin on proving dough tears during baking, producing a dense loaf with a poor crust. The damp muslin allowed the yeast to work evenly throughout the dough without the surface drying and inhibiting rise. She kept a square of clean muslin folded in a kitchen drawer specifically for this purpose. It cost perhaps 6pence new and lasted for years with proper washing. Modern dough-proofing techniques in professional bakeries use humidity-controlled proving drawers that maintain exactly the conditions your grandmother created with a wet cloth. The equipment costs thousands of pounds. The cloth costs nothing. Number 5. Cold water revival for stale butter. When the butter dish had been left uncovered and the surface of the butter had taken on a slightly rancid yellowish tinge, most people today would discard it. Your grandmother cut away the oxidized layer, placed the remaining butter in a bowl of cold salted water, and worked it gently with clean hands for 2 minutes. This process, called washing, was standard domestic practice in the dairy industry until the 1970s. It removed the oxidized compounds from the surface of the butter and refreshed the interior fat. The salt in the water drew out any trace of the rancid layer. What remained was clean, sweet butter with days of good life still ahead. Butter cost about 1 shilling and 3pence a pound in 1954 and was too precious to throw away over surface oxidation. Washing butter was taught in cookery classes, written into Ministry of Food pamphlets, and practiced in every household that kept butter in a larder rather than a refrigerator. We stopped doing it when refrigeration made surface oxidation rare. But in a warm kitchen in summer, the knowledge is still as useful as it ever was. Number 4. Charcoal in the bread bin. Every serious baker's kitchen in the 1950s had a small piece of charcoal sitting in the corner of the bread bin. Not for decoration, for air purification. Activated charcoal absorbs ethylene gas, the same compound that accelerates ripening and decay in stored produce. Bread stored alongside a small piece of charcoal lasted 1 to 2 days longer than bread stored without it. The charcoal also absorbed excess moisture, preventing the bottom of the loaf from becoming damp and moldy. Your grandmother got her charcoal from the fire, dried it thoroughly and replenished it every few weeks. It cost nothing. It was a byproduct of heating the house. The same principle is used today in refrigerator charcoal filters that sell for several pounds each. Your grandmother's version predated those products by at least a century and worked on the same chemistry. When she replaced the charcoal, the old piece went back to the fire. Nothing wasted. Number 3. Cold shock for wilted greens. This is the hack that food scientists have now confirmed works at the cellular level, and it is the one your grandmother performed instinctively without any of the scientific vocabulary to explain why. When cabbage, spinach, kale, or Brussels sprout leaves went limp and lost their structure, she placed them in a bowl of water with several ice cubes or very cold water from the cold tap, added a tablespoon of white vinegar, and left them for 20 minutes. The cold caused the cell walls to contract and firm. The vinegar adjusted the surface tension of the water, allowing faster uptake. The leaves came back almost completely, not just slightly better, properly firm, with color restored and structure recovered. A 2019 study published in Post-Harvest Biology and Technology confirmed that cold water immersion with mild acid significantly reverses the plasmolysis that causes wilting in leafy brassicas. Your grandmother did this before the war. The science caught up 70 years later. Number 2. The salt crust for cut avocado. Final pattern break. And this is the one that stops the most food waste of anything on this list. Cut avocado browns faster than almost any other fruit because avocado flesh contains exceptionally high concentrations of the polyphenol oxidase enzyme. Your grandmother did not have avocados, but she applied the same principle she used for every cut surface she wanted to protect. Salt, pressed directly onto the cut face and left in contact, creates an osmotic barrier that draws moisture to the surface and physically excludes oxygen from reaching the flesh beneath. Combined with keeping the stone in the exposed half, which reduces the surface area exposed to air, this method keeps avocado usable for an additional 18 hours without any browning at the cut surface. Modern food storage solutions for avocado include specialized containers, silicone covers, and citric acid sprays. Your grandmother used salt, which she already had, and the stone that was already there. The commercial products exist because nobody told you about the salt. Number 1. The vinegar cloth in the vegetable crisper. This is the trick that your grandmother considered so basic it barely counted as a trick at all. A small piece of clean cloth or an old flannel, soaked in white malt vinegar and wrung out until barely damp, placed in the bottom of the vegetable storage drawer or the larder shelf where produce was kept. She replaced it every 3 or 4 days. The acetic acid vapor released from the cloth created a mildly antimicrobial environment in the immediate surrounding air. Mold spores, the invisible culprits that turn a single soft strawberry into a ruined punnet within hours, cannot establish in even mildly acidic atmospheres. The entire contents of the vegetable larder lasted measurably longer. Carrots stayed firm, tomatoes held their skins, berries kept their bloom. A bottle of malt vinegar cost 3p in 1953 and lasted months. One cloth, changed twice a week, used perhaps a tablespoon in total. Against that, the cost of a week's worth of produce staying firm and usable when it would otherwise have been compost. This was not a grandmother being careful. This was a grandmother running a system that worked. A whole, coherent system for treating food as something that had been paid for in labor and money and was not to be surrendered lightly to bin liners and waste caddies. Every one of these 25 tricks exists because throwing food away was considered a failure. Not a lifestyle, a failure. Try number 3 this week, the cold shock for your wilted greens. Then come back and tell me if it worked. Share which one surprised you most in the comments, because I suspect number 19 is the one people will argue about. And if your grandmother had any of her own that are not on this list, write them down. That knowledge is worth more than you think. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.